every forgotten artifact of a very specific group of people. If you were born between 1977 and 1985, this is your story. You are a Xennial. And even if you were not born in those exact years, you are going to want to hear this, because the story of the Xennial is the story of the last people to truly know the before. Think about what that means. You are the bridge. You are the ultimate translators between an analog past and a hyper-digital future. You grew up in a world that was tangible. You could touch your entertainment. You could hold your music in your hands. Let us talk about the music first. Do you remember the cassette tape? Think about the physical weight of it. The clear plastic shell. The little spools of dark brown tape inside. If you wanted to hear your favorite song again, you could not just ask a smart device to repeat it. You had to press a heavy, clunky plastic button. You had to wait. You had to listen to the high-pitched whir of the tape rewinding. And if the player ate your tape, pulling that delicate ribbon out into a tangled mess, you did not just throw it away. You performed delicate surgery. You took a standard yellow number 2 pencil. You stuck it into the hexagonal wheel, and you carefully, patiently spun it, pulling the tape back into place, hoping you did not completely spoil the audio. You earned your music. And then came the compact disc, the CD, the absolute peak of modern luxury at the time. You had a binder, a thick, heavy, zippered binder filled with shiny discs. You would flip through the plastic sleeves, admiring the album art. But it was not a perfect system. If you wanted to take that music on the go, you had a portable CD player. It did not fit in your pocket, would completely interrupt the vibe. You would be walking down the street, feeling cool, wearing your favorite oversized sweater, and then a skip. But you adapted. You learned the exact, perfectly smooth walking stride required to keep the music playing. Let us transition to how you watched movies. Friday nights were an event, an absolute cultural ritual. You did not just open an app and scroll endlessly until you fell asleep. You went to the video rental store. You walked through the sliding doors, greeted by the smell of popcorn and plastic cases. You walked the aisles, the horror section, the comedy section. You picked up the hollow plastic display boxes to read the back. And when you finally made your choice, you had to hope the actual VHS tape was in stock behind the counter. You took it home, popped it into the heavy metal VCR, and you watched. And if the picture was a little fuzzy, you did not complain. You just got up and adjusted the tracking dial. You manually fixed the screen to get rid of the white noise. You had to be present. You had to participate in your own entertainment. But the most important part of your childhood is what was missing. There was no internet documenting your every move, your awkward phases, your terrible haircuts, your questionable fashion choices. They are all safe. They exist only in physical photo albums tucked away on a shelf boss battle, talking to their parents first. You had to politely ask if your friend was available. There was no texting. There were no emojis. Just your voice, a curly cord stretching across the room, and the hope that nobody else in your family would pick up another receiver and interrupt your incredibly important adolescent conversation. You would sit on the living room floor cushion, wrapping that spiraled cord around your finger over and over again while you talked for hours. But then, right as you were coming of age, the world shifted. It did not happen overnight, but it felt like it. You were in middle school or high school or maybe early college, and suddenly the personal computer arrived. Not the sleek, invisible machines we have today. These were massive beige blocks that took up an entire desk. They hummed, they clicked, they had big, heavy monitors that buzzed with a faint glow, and you had to learn how to use them. You took typing classes. You learned the home row. You learned how to command the machine. And this is where your generational nickname comes from. The Oregon Trail generation. You know exactly what I am talking about. In the computer lab, sitting in front of a glowing green screen, you learned about life, death, and resource management. You had to decide whether to ford the river or caulk the wagon and float it. You usually made the wrong choice. You hunted pixelated buffalo. You carried hundreds of pounds of meat back to your wagon, only to be told you could only carry 100 pounds. And inevitably, someone in your party succumbed to dysentery. It was a rite of passage. It taught you resilience. It taught you that the digital world could be harsh, but you could always reboot and try again. Then came the true transition, the dial-up internet. Think about that sound, the screeching, the beeping, the hissing, the digital handshake that connected you to the World Wide Web. It was an event. You had to be intentional about going online. It was a destination. You would log on to a chat room or an instant messenger. You spent hours perfectly crafting your profile. You picked the exact right font color, the exact right quote to express your teenage angst. You set your away message so everyone would know exactly how busy and important you were, even if you were just going to the other room to get a glass of water. You learned how to communicate in a brand new way. You learned digital shorthand. But it was still a fragile connection. If someone in your house needed to use the phone, you were immediately kicked off. Your connection was severed. You lived with that constant, low-level anxiety that your incredibly important chat would be interrupted by a sibling wanting to call a friend. You are the bridge because you experienced both of these worlds in their purest forms. You are bilingual. You speak fluent analog, but you are entirely comfortable in the digital world. You know how to program an old machine, but you seamlessly adapted to smartphones, apps, and streaming. You watched the world change, and you adapted right along with it. necessity. You remember how to be bored. You remember how to sit in a waiting room without staring at a screen. You know how to let your mind wander. You know how to be alone with your thoughts. And because you have a foot in both worlds, you end up translating for everyone. You carry the fierce independence of the generation before you and the adaptable optimism of the generation after you. You can explain the old world to the new one and vice versa. It is a lot of heavy lifting to be the generational peacemaker. It can be exhausting. You are constantly code switching. You are constantly adapting. You are the balance in a rapidly changing society. You understand why older folks struggle with new apps because you remember when those apps did not exist. You understand why younger folks rely on technology because you helped build the culture that normalized it. You are the essential link. Let us talk about your young adulthood. You entered the workforce right as the rules were changing. You were promised that if you worked hard and got a degree, you would easily buy a house and settle down. But instead, many of you graduated right into the massive economic downturn of 2008. You had to hustle. You had to pivot. You learned that the old promises were no longer guaranteed. But instead of giving up, you adapted. You created new paths. You embraced the gig economy before it even had a name. You learned how to market yourself online. You learned how to build a personal brand. You took the resilience you learned on the Oregon Trail and applied it to real life. And culturally, you experienced a golden era. Let us simply bask in the memories for a moment. You lived through the peak of music television, when they actually played music videos. You would rush home from school to watch the countdowns. You learned the choreography to boy band videos in your living room. You debated the merits of grunge versus pop. You made mixtapes by holding a dual cassette recorder up to the radio, waiting for hours for your favorite song to play, and trying desperately to hit record before the DJ started talking over the intro. That took dedication. That took patience. You curated your life carefully. You embraced baggy jeans and neon colors. You did not have influencers telling you exactly what to buy. You had to figure it out by reading magazines, the glossy pages filled with quizzes and advice. You ripped out posters and covered your bedroom walls until you could not see the paint anymore. Your room was a physical manifestation of your personality. Think about the school days, the glorious arrival of the Scholastic Book Fair, walking into the library and seeing those metal cases folded open to reveal crisp, unread paperbacks, colorful erasers, and bookmarks that smelled like fruit. The sheer excitement of picking out a new read, or the meticulous art of passing notes in class. You did not send a text message under the desk. You carefully wrote your thoughts on wide ruled paper, and then you folded it. You folded it into an intricate, tight little triangle that could be flicked across the room when the teacher turned around to write on the chalkboard. There was an element of danger. If that note was intercepted, your deepest secrets would be read aloud. And the video games. Long before wireless controllers and high-definition virtual reality, you sat cross-legged on the floor, tethered to the console by a thick black wire. When the game did not load, you knew exactly what to do. You took the gray plastic cartridge out, you blew into the bottom of it, and you pushed it back in. It defied all logic, but it worked perfectly every single time. You spent hours trying to rescue princesses, jump over green pipes, and beat your own high scores. It defied all logic, but it worked perfectly every single time. You spent hours trying to rescue princesses, jump over green pipes, and beat your own high scores. Now, some people argue about the exact years. Some say 1985 is definitively millennial. Some say it belongs in the cusp. But if you remember the struggle of untangling a phone cord, if you remember the screech of dial-up, if you remember the pure joy of a Friday night movie rental, you share the spirit of the Xennial. You carry the memory of the before. As you listen to my voice, I want you to appreciate your own journey. You have lived through more technological and social change in a few decades than most people experience in a lifetime. You went from writing cursive letters on lined paper to instantly messaging anyone on the globe. You went from relying on heavy-bound encyclopedias to holding the entirety of human knowledge in the palm of your hand. And you handled it all with incredible grace. So take a deep breath. Let your shoulders drop. Unclench your jaw. Let go of the need to keep up with every single new trend. You have already proven that you can adapt. You have nothing left to prove to the digital world. You are allowed to unplug. You are allowed to embrace the quiet of the analog days. You can put away the screens. You can close your eyes. You can rest. Perhaps you can even enjoy a quiet evening making that perfect 45-minute chili recipe, letting the rich, hearty aroma fill the air while you completely detach from the glowing screens. You are the bridge, but bridges need maintenance. Bridges need to be cared for. You need to care for yourself. Remember the feeling of a warm summer evening, riding your bike, the wind on your face, no destination in mind, no one tracking your location, just pure, unadulterated freedom. Keep that feeling with you. It belongs to you. No one can ever digitize that memory. It is yours to keep forever. Sleep well, you beautiful, brilliant analog soul. Sleep well.